Hey guys, welcome to another UHS MDCAT biology video for A-level students, and this time we'll be doing the genetics topic, which is chapter number 10 from the UHS syllabus, and it's pretty vast. So all of these topics, they basically there's this vast amount of material that they're covering from various chapters, and it has been condensed into one unit for the UHS. So this is going to take a while, so don't be depressed. This is pretty complicated topic. So there's some stuff that is really important. Let's start with diabetes, and you'd be like, why diabetes? It's one of the most interesting. Now we all know diabetes is of two types: diabetes 1 and diabetes 2. Now diabetes 1 is early onset, whereas diabetes 2 is late onset. And for early onset diabetes, there is a greater influence of genetics because the body is incapable of making enough insulin, whereas diabetes 2 is happens with age, when the cells that are the target cells for insulin, they sort of develop a resistance over time. And while these are genetically ordained diseases, and in one way or another have a genetic basis, because there is this gene on a particular chromosome that codes for the insulin protein, right? However, because there are certain environmental factors that make it more likely for you to develop diabetes. So it's one of those interesting diseases like blood pressure, which have a genetic basis but are environmentally impacted. And you might be confused in this respect, so let me go into detail. Diabetes 2, we just talked about how this is late onset and doesn't really have anything to do with a problem with the insulin itself. Rather, it's the cells themselves that develop a resistance to it. But there are certain types of diabetes 2 which actually happen in young adults, so not in older people, right? I guess they're called MODs. And the percentage of people who have this, from the percentage who have late onset, is very little, and there are a lot of factors that sort of cause it to be more prominent, mostly because it's kind of really unique. So in this topic we're going to talk about which of these two diabetes, early or late onset, is the more common one, what is so interesting about this subtype of type 2. For this you need your book with you. So yes, the number one point, diabetes mellitus is in fact a hereditary disorder, something you need to just accept. You may already have had an idea of this, but some people don't. Anyhow, please take out your books if you haven't already, and let me prep everything first. Right. So if you gotten it quite into your head that diabetes mellitus is a genetic disorder, it is actually a heterogeneous group of disorders. So it's not particularly referring to one problem, but rather a set of problems which are pretty different from each other but have certain distinct common points. And said common point being an elevated blood sugar level, but the reasons behind said elevated blood sugar level differ in each of the heterogeneous disorders. Now, diabetics are unable to metabolize blood sugar in their body, and because of that, they pass glucose in their urine. Now, you have to know a couple of this stuff. Diabetes is the leading cause of, now some of this you may have known directly or indirectly, kidney failure, because the kidney has to work overtime removing all of that water with glucose. Adult blindness, because diabetes disturbs the nervous system, including the nerves. Lower limb amputation, because your ability to sense pain is diminished. Sometimes there are infections and you don't detect them on time, and when you do, your leg needs to be amputated because they have progressed too much. And heart disease. Right, so diabetes is a leading cause of these. And another point which I just told you is that it is a heterogeneous meaning not exactly the same, characterized by differences, variations, but they form this one set. Why we call all of these diabetes or types of them is because in all of them the end result is an elevated blood glucose level. And there are two major types of diabetes. Type 1 is insulin dependent diabetes. Type 2 is non-insulin dependent diabetes. We have done this at A levels. Now, type 1 may also be referred as juvenile diabetes because it usually occurs in early age before 40. So you can write this, that type 1 is sort of like develops in early age and most certainly before 40, usually much earlier, and it arises due to deficiency of pancreatic hormone insulin that normally routes blood glucose to cells for use. And type 1 is actually maybe an autoimmune disorder. We also talked about this indirectly at A levels, right? So it's because there is this shortage of insulin, which is a pancreatic hormone, and type 1 may be considered an autoimmune disease. Maybe it's not actually, all of this is not really certain. And it is believed that the immune system sort of like backfires and makes antibodies against the body's own cells, right? So the beta cells are being destroyed, and the beta cells are present in the pancreas in clusters, and these are the ones that sort of like make insulin. And sometimes specific viral infections activate the autoimmune disorder. It may already be present, but it is triggered by some sort of a specific, not all of them, just certain viral infections might do this. So while you may already have had this autoimmune disorder, you would have developed it suddenly at the age of 30, because before that there was no trigger. So right over here we have an environmental influence. As a result, pancreas The T cells of the immune system attack pancreas and destroy insulin producing beta cells. And what does this result in? The pancreas does not make enough insulin, and so diabetes of type 1 must receive exogenous insulin to survive. Exogenous meaning originating from somewhere other than the body of the patient itself. Exogenous, exo should make it easy enough to recognize. And progress is being made in understanding the genetic basis of this disease. Obviously, there is some genetic basis. It is an autoimmune disorder in which the insulin producing cells are themselves destroyed by the body's own beta cells. Usually happens at an early age, before 40. Sometimes there may be a specific viral trigger, but we're not 100% sure about genetic basis. And now, important thing, insulin gene is present on the short arm of chromosome 11. And I don't think this is a question that has been quite asked yet, but you never know. You should really remember this. So what I do is I tend to just underline stuff like this. And polymorphism and genetic variations within this locus is responsible for diabetes type 1 susceptibility. Polymorphism, the gene can exist in different forms, but today it is no more than just a recessive single gene trait. It is a multifactorial inheritance associated with several alleles. Now, multifactorial means that there isn't just that one locus. At some point, people who had diabetes would simply have had this recessive allele, but over time it has become a polygenic disorder because there are multiple loci involved, as well as a environmental influence. Now, multifactorial is an important term. But before that, you have to write no longer a recessive single gene trait. A recessive meaning we have just one causative allele and it is recessive, and one gene with one causative allele. But rather it is multifactorial. And this question has come up in the past about multifactorial, so be on your toes. Multifactorial means polygenic. So if they are, we'll be talking about what polygenic is in a bit of detail. They actually have a topic on that. And they've talked about how skin color is a polygenic trait, and about 3 to 6 genes on average are involved per person. That is an interesting topic. Plus several associated alleles that may cause it. So not just one allele. This is a pretty complicated topic. So it's not just a problem with that particular gene on chromosome 11 as you may have thought. Right, so this was all about type 1, about type 2 non-insulin, and about 90% of all diabetics are type 2. This is an important statistics. About 90%. right? These persons produce some endogenous insulin themselves, but their body cells gradually fail to respond and so cannot take up glucose from the blood because they are not responding to the insulin which is itself present, and they have sort of developed an insulin resistance. Occurs among people who are older than 40, more common among the obese. So again, we have another form of environmental impact because the physical state of the person does influence it, his health, his fitness. So this is all another reason why it is multifactorial. And obesity increases insulin resistance as exercise reduces obesity. It directly increases insulin sensitivity and improves glucose tolerance. So the more exercise a person has, obesity is reduced in said person, and indirectly because of reduction in obesity, what happens is that glucose tolerance increases, meaning the ability of a cell to take up glucose increases, as well as obviously its sensitivity to insulin. Now about 10 MCQs might come from this, and not all of the topics I will be telling you have yet been tested, but there is a chance because this is a very risky playground we're in. There definitely exists a genetic component because multifactorial in the form of an underlying tendency to develop diabetes under certain environmental conditions, right? Like if you're eating too much or there is an infection, whatever. Now about 2% to 5% of type 2 diabetes get the disease early in life before 25 years of age. Interesting. And they are called MODY. But again, this is an important statistics, both the age factor and how many people out of that 90%. Not a lot, but definitely significant. And this is called maturity onset diabetes of the young. Right out, they're gonna ask for the complete name. And MODY can be inherited as an autosomal dominant trait. This is important, that autosomal part is easy enough. The fact that it is an autosomal dominant is interesting. And again, you might be confused because the inheritance of this particular trait is very complicated. There are variations, many variations. 50% of MODY are caused by mutations in the glucokinase gene, and we remember glucokinase from this enzyme cascade we studied in the glucose metabolism topic in homeostasis. It's sort of like attached phosphorus groups to it, I think. So 50% is due to mutation in glucokinase gene. Again, a fairly important statistics. And it usually converts glucose to glucose 6-phosphate in the pancreas, obviously. There are other, for other genes which encode transcription factors which are involved in the development of the pancreas and insulin regulation. But these 4 MODY genes do not play any significant role in adult onset type 2. So, right, we have these 4 other genes, and these code for transcription factors, that is, they help in the making of mRNA from certain genes, and these somehow have a role in pancreatic development and insulin regulation, and the rest 50% might be caused by some sort of a mutation. However, they don't really have any impact on a person, or they don't really have any part or any significant part to play in adult onset type 2. Remaining 50% be a mutation in any of these, but no significant role in adult onset. So this is a lot of different stuff, but let's not stress it. Blood pressure is also an example of a multifactorial trait, because there is a correlation between systolic, diastolic blood pressure of parents and children, so there is a genetic basis. And this correlation is partially due to genes in common, and blood pressure is also influenced by environmental factors like your diet, the amount of stress and tension you are in regularly. Anyhow, this was it for the insulin topic. One of my most favorite and interesting, which is why I started with this, even though it's at the last, interestingly. Some stuff they have given in hell of a lot of detail is hemophilia and color blindness. I feel that is something we should also do, for no other reason than the fact that this is literally the one that they ask the most. But you also have to be able to understand this topic of sex determination. We just have to read the part about it that is for humans and not for Drosophila. So over here they've given just some detail about sex determination, but I guess we should just skip over here. Patterns of sex determination, and this isn't just for human beings. There are literally 3 types. And we know which one is for man and female: XY determination, XY, XX, but it's a bit different for various species. Just a bit of common detail. So number 1, there is a wide variety of sex determining mechanism, but 3 patterns are more common. Again, this is important. Again, write this down. This is important concept. Many methods. So if you go with the animal kingdom, you would realize that there is hell of a lot of ways this can work out. But some of them are more common, and so we're going to just talk about those. 3 most common, which include the one found in man. Anyhow, there is the XOXX type, and this pattern of determination is found in the grasshopper and in the proteinop bug. So it's XOXX, right? and the male is XO because the male just has one X chromosome, doesn't have any other chromosome, and the other one is entirely missing. So the male is heterogametic because it forms two types of sperms. Half the sperms have the X chromosome while the other half are without any chromosome at all. And this is pretty interesting. So the male is what we call heterogametic, whereas the female will be homogametic because she is only able to contribute just an X. So a gamete without any sex chromosome is called a nullogamete. So either an X can be contributed to make a girl protein or bug, or a nullogamete to make another male. So examples: the grasshopper and the protein or bug. I really like this, protein or bug. Sounds so cool. Anyhow, traveling further. Now the female is XX because she has two X chromosomes, is homogametic, forms just one type of egg. Each egg carries an X chromosome, and sex of the offspring depends on the kind of sperm that fertilizes the egg. So the sex ratio between the male and the female offspring is 1:1. Interesting in my opinion. This is about a bit of extra info. So as some species have compound sex chromosomes, they maintain many X or Y or both XY chromosomes of more than one kind. They act together as a single sex-determining group. That is why the difference in the number of chromosomes between the male and the female is very large. In the roundworm Ascaris incurva, the female has 42 chromosomes in the form of 8 pairs of compound X along with 13 pairs of autosomes. The male has 35 chromosomes comprising 8X plus 1Y along with 13 pairs of autosome. It's interesting, worth writing down. So we have the Ascaris incurva. That is a roundworm. The Ascaris part is pretty telling. So female has 42 chromosomes. And how does the female achieve that? Well, it's simple. So we have, because there are 8 pairs of X, that makes 16 plus 13 pairs of autosomes. So compound sex chromosome. For the male, there are just 35 because we have 8 pairs of compound X, 8 X's, 1 Y, and just 13 pairs of autosomes. So the autosomes part is the same. 8X, 1Y plus 13 pairs of autosomes. So this is an entirely interesting way, and so it's possible for the male and the female of the same species to have different chromosomes, in case they ask this in an MCQ. In case they develop originality. Compound sex determination. So we're done with Let's move onwards. This is the XYXX type. Our type is found in the Drosophila and in man, so we do in fact have at least something in common. Drosophila plus in man. Because the male is XY, the female is XX. The males are again heterogametic, and they produce two types of sex-determining gametes. Half the sperm carry the X and the other half carry the Y, and chances for both types are equal. Females are homogametic, produce only one type of egg each with an X, and the sex of the offspring is again determined by the type of the sperm, same with the previous pattern. Sex ratio is 1:1 and is indicative of the chances of the sex of the offspring, because the chances are equal in man, and by man I mean humankind. Now for the third one, it's the ZZ and the ZW type of inheritance, and this is common in birds, in moths and butterflies, and these are all the sort of creatures that can fly, so if that makes it easier for you to remember. Z because they can't sleep while flying, can they? Or actually a few can, I think. And this is the reverse of the XYXX system, in case you ask. Reverse of XXXY, because in this case the ZZ is the male and the ZY is the female. Here the female is heterogametic, so ZY is the female and is heterogametic. But the male is homogametic, ZZ. So in these species, it is actually the female, the egg, which determines the sex of the child. Whatever. So the female produces two kinds of eggs, one containing Z and the other containing W in equal proportion. All the sperms are alike, each carrying a Z chromosome. It is the kind of egg that determines the sex of the offspring. When a Z carrying sperm is fertilized by the sperm, a male offspring is produced. But when a W carrying egg is fertilized, a female offspring is produced. And the sex ratio is still 1:1, so that is a commonality between all of the different types of ways of sex determination. So this is it. Hopefully you guys found this to be helpful. I'll be doing the next part of the video soon, so please wait. And if you like this, please like, subscribe and leave a comment.